Apparently, there is people bashing, or at the very least calling this latest arc of Mushoku Tensei boring. Now, this honestly just blows my mind. If there is anyone truly saying this at this point in time, and we're 15 episodes deep into the anime, I don't know what to say, because it's like, it's been clear as day since the first episode of Mushoku Tensei that it is a coming of age story, slice of life, and we're seeing the slow growth of Rudy, but also the characters around him, like Eris. And this entire episode fits that fundamental theme, that vibe. Everything that Mushoku Tensei has established up to this very point, it fits that entire vibe to the letter. And this is probably the best representation of Mushoku Tensei, this episode in its entirety. And I dare say, even though people apparently are calling this a boring arc or a boring episode or just it's bad or whatever, I dare say that this is the best episode so far from the anime. For good reasons. There's a lot of reasons I have, and I'm going to dive into them in a moment, but it blows my mind, because it's like, you have beautiful art, you have great scenery, shots, and stuff like that, you have imagery that makes you question about maybe the folklore of the world, etc., and when you get stuff like this, and people still call it boring, it's like, what do you really want? What do you really want as an anime watcher? Do you just want mindless action? Like, don't get me wrong, I love me some good fighting and some good mindless action, but it's just like, this series is not for that. It's a really good story-driven world. The entire story is written in such a way that, like I said many times in the past, that it's why I love it so much and why I consider this one of the best isekai series, because of the way it writes its characters and world. Just, okay, enough with that. I wanted to get that off the table, because it's crazy to me that some people actually think that. So, let's talk about the beginning of this episode, because I think it's the perfect place to really start. The establishing shots of this week's episode sets a tone. The tone of rainy season has arrived, and the entire beast tribe has to change their way of life to be able to survive in this environment. And this is something that we are told through the imagery that they have to go through year after year every time the rainy season arrives. And you can see their very way of life really takes a radical shift, because if we look at last week's episode, we see a vibrant, beautiful forest, life everywhere, and they have agriculture, farms, and stuff on the ground. And then you come to this episode and you see how the entirety of the forest floor is flooded with rain, and this keeps going up to 3+ months, according to what we found out in the episode. So with that being said, you have it to where the beast tribe, once the rainy season stops, they need to prep for the rainy season again. They need to start growing food to be able to kind of stockpile it for when the rainy season comes, they're able to last and survive. We get to see a lot of this now, because this episode establishes their struggle and their way of life, that it isn't necessarily easy for them. Even if they are self-sufficient, they've had to be self-sufficient because of the location that they actually live in. The entire opening and the entire beginning of the episode is perfect for that, which is one of the big reasons that I've always praised Mushoku Tensei for, is because its opening scenes really do establish the episode and the different environments that we're getting into, to understand the world around us and how vibrant and living it is, and it doesn't feel like it's just static and it's just Rudy moving from scene to scene. And since we're talking about tone, there is some imagery and some symbolism that I do want to dive into that I think is incredibly important when I look at the narrative of what this episode is actually about. Because if you want to get into the nitty-gritty, what this episode was, besides obviously being reined in, you had it to where Eris was teaching the two beast girls how to fight with a sword, or at least one of them. She was just training them and just, being a mentor temporarily for 3 months. And throughout this entire training session, we see multiple shots of frogs. They appear multiple times throughout the episode, and I feel like this is definitely intentional. You don't just put multiple scenes focusing on frogs if it doesn't actually have some greater meaning. I mean, this is stuff like with crows or butterflies or flowers you see in anime. When they appear, it obviously means something. The animators and the writer obviously had intentions when those were placed into those given scenes. So I decided to look into some frog symbolism, which, yeah, that brings me back, like flower symbolism. And apparently, from what I could find out from frogs, they represent water, fertility, and renewal. Now, to kind of get the best way to summarize this is that water makes a lot of sense. Rain in the episode. Fertility can represent a mixture with renewal. For instance, life and death, the cycle of life, or the seasons changing and all that. That's kind of what that all can represent. New life and something being born. And when you look at what this episode was, it was more of cleansing and washing away the filth that was around Eris's mentor, and, getting it out in the air about what actually happened, how, she isn't a bad person, and that the entire Beast Tribe started to have a better and more positive outlook on her. And so you can kind of consider the frog imagery and symbolism as washing away the bad and bringing in the new and a good and better, bright future and outlook on the situation. It's a really thought-provoking, subject, honestly, with the frogs. I could be entirely wrong, and it could mean something else entirely, because there was a few on Twitter I saw talking about it as well, and one of my friends on Twitter was actually mentioning that it actually could be foresight with, the demon that gave Rudy the eye. So, when you do think about it, that also can make a lot of sense, too. Maybe like a demon watching through the frog's eye, or whatever, always watching and paying attention to what they're doing. Whatever the case, or whatever you want to believe, I think that it's an incredible episode with just imagery alone. It tells a whole story without dialogue, which is a big drawing factor to Mushoku Tensei for me and I think many others. But let's actually get into the stuff that we learned from this episode. So one thing that does need to be mentioned is the whole god scene. The different deities that we learned about, like North God, Demon God, etc. towards the end of the episode. And I feel like this scene is definitely telling to what's potentially going to happen in the future for Rudy. For instance, they're probably going to encounter one of these gods, and they're going to have to do something about it. What's to say that Rudy hasn't already encountered one? Because, we know he encountered, like, the Demon Empress, which it's very possible that could be, like, a demon god, for all we know. And then we know that he has constant dreamlike talks with an entity, when he dreams, so that could also be another god. So when you think about what this episode did, it was just more lore and world building and establishing things around Rudy as they journey on their path to find, the land that they once were at. Now, I do want to dive into a few more things, especially when the rain actually let up. When the rain decided to let up, you see a ladybug on a leaf, and I know this personally because I was told this by my, grandparents growing up, that ladybugs could mean good fortune. And I did look it up, and they usually do. In a lot of cultures, they can mean good fortune. And when you see a ladybug sitting on the leaf, and you see the rain letting up, and then this scene happens directly after our monkey-faced man jumps into the cart with our group, it kind of lets us know that the dude has good intentions, he's not evil, and he potentially brings good fortune to the entire party. I like that. I really do like that entire moment, and it makes me happy as well to see the character return and actually going to be journeying with our group, because that was one of my things I was talking about in the previous episode, is that, Mushoku Tensei, we have a lot of characters we meet, and there's many characters that we have to part ways with, because our characters are journeying from town to town and all that, city to city, and so some characters do have to be left behind. We can't have a gigantic 30-person cast. So I'm glad to see at least one of the characters that Rudy met is coming along, and I hope he becomes a potential permanent addition, because I feel like he has a lot of life and vibe to him, and I like him so far. I feel like there is a lot we can learn from him, and I feel like it'd be nice to see another grown-up amongst the group. Yeah, Rudy is technically an adult in another world, but I would like to see an actual adult character in this world alongside of Rudy and Eris and all that. It would be nice to see. So all in all, this arc of Mushoku Tensei, this mini arc, was definitely something I enjoyed. It may have been only 2 episodes long, but it was definitely enjoyable, and definitely something I wouldn't consider boring. I don't know why people would say that, but I've loved the Beast Tribe, I love their culture, and hopefully this isn't the last time we actually see of them, because it was nice, all the focus we got in these past few episodes. But yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. So Mushoku Tensei this week was excellent. That is the least I could say about it, and it is the best episode yet. I know I keep saying that week after week. It's kind of funny, honestly. It reminds me so much of how I used to be for ReZero, and I think I also did that throughout the entirety of the first half of Mushoku Tensei. But it's the truth. It's how I feel. Week after week, the series just gets better and better, and I get more invested and involved and immersed, and that's just all I want. That's all I want from anime. This is how you make a good isekai. This is a great anime. anime. But, okay, I'm gonna leave it at that, though, guys. Thank you so much for everyone that tuned into this video. It does help me out a lot, and I appreciate every individual one of you out there. If you do enjoy this video, you know, please leave a like. You know, please hit that bell icon. It does help me out a lot. It helps with the algorithm, etc. But, okay, guys, be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out. See you next week.